Hello, grade 10 students. In this video, we're going to start about our first lesson for this year, which is about the nervous system of part 1. In this lesson, we're going to identify the organization of the nervous system in vertebrates. First of all, what are the functions of the nervous system? The nervous system receives information. For example, I sit in the class. I saw Fatima, for example, playing with the phone. So I receive the information using my sense organs, for example, my eye. I process it inside my brain, I analyze it, and then I will give the response or the action responsible for this. So receiving information is the function of the nervous system, integrating it, analyzing it, interpreting this information, and then I will give the response or the action. The nervous system is divided into two main parts: central nervous system, abbreviated as CNS, central nervous system, and PNS, a peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is composed mainly of the brain and the spinal cord, whereas the peripheral nervous system is composed only of nerves. The most important parts of the brain are the cerebrum, the cerebellum, the medulla oblongata, and the spinal cord. The cerebrum is composed of two hemispheres, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. So you have two hemispheres, the right and the left. We have the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata. As you see here, the medulla oblongata is like a link between the brain and the spinal cord. It's like a link. It's a link between the brain and the spinal cord. It's called medulla oblongata. It has different functions. So right versus left cerebrum, right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. The left one is related to the number skills, to the language, to the reasoning, to the spoken language, scientific issues, and the right-handed. For example, whenever you write using your right hand, your left brain is working. And the opposite is true. You write using your left hand, your right brain is working. The right brain functions maybe for 3D forms, realizing this, for the insight, art awareness, imagination, using the right brain, left-handed, and the music awareness. All of them, they use the right brain. You ask me, I have to study this? No, they are for general information. Spinal cord and the brain, as I said, medulla oblongata has a role in breathing. Cerebellum has a role in movement and balance. That's why whenever you're drunk or you drink alcohol or something, you have a problem in movement and balance. That's why it affects the cerebellum. And the cerebrum has an important function in the higher thinking. This slide is a very important slide. As I said, nervous system is divided into two main parts: the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is composed of the brain and the spinal cord. The brain and the spinal cord, they form the central nervous system. The brain is divided into cerebrum, cerebellum, and the medulla oblongata. They realize information, integrate them, and then they take the proper action, what to do for the body. And the nerves, they compose what's known by peripheral nervous system, PNS, peripheral nervous system, nerves, شرايين. So, peripheral nervous system, so they are cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Cranial became the word cranium from the brain. So they ramify from the brain, whereas the spinal nerves, they ramify from the spinal cord. They branch from the spinal cord. What is the function of these nerves? These nerves, they have an important function. They carry messages between the central nervous system and the effector organ. What's the meaning of effector organ? For example, my hand. I have an order for my brain to carry my phone. So I use the message goes from the brain to my effector organ, it's called receptor organ, which is my hand. Then I take the action to hold my phone. So here is the hand, and the one that makes the action is called the receptor or the effector organ. Cerebrum has a role in voluntary or unconscious activities. Cerebellum, the balance of the movement. Medulla oblongata, it has a role in regulating for example, or controlling the blood pressure, the heart rate, the breathing and swallowing. Spinal cord, the main communication between the brain and the different organs. That's why whenever you have a person over, you heard about some person, they get paralyzed, they have paralysis whenever they have a car accident. Why? Because the spinal cord was cut or destroyed. Whenever it's cut or destroyed, there is no link between the brain and the different limbs, the hands and the legs. So they will have paralysis. Maybe it's total, maybe it's partial paralysis, okay? Sensory input, integration, motor input. So sensory input, for example, I saw, for example, let's say Ahmed Farhat, I saw Ahmed playing, using a, for example, a phone during my session. So I saw him using my sensory organ. So we call this a sensory organ. This is the eye. It's called the sensory input. Then this message will move to the brain. The brain will integrate it, will analyze the information, and will send the order or the action to the brain. The brain will send it to the leg or to the effector organ or to my hand. Or for example, I go, Ahmed, stop doing this. So I realize this using my brain, then the brain sends the order to my effector organs. So here, the nervous system is a network. Nervous system, we need a stimulus. For example, I saw a bottle of water. This bottle of water, I saw it. Okay? So I saw it. This is the stimulus. This stimulates my organ, my nervous system. I saw it using my eyes. So this is the receptor organ. Okay? It will recognize the stimulus and will stimulate a message. So a message will move from the receptor organ through the central nervous system, which is the brain, and to the spinal cord. But this message needs a taxi. This taxi is called a neuron. It's called sensory neuron, or it's called afferent. So it carries the message from the receptor organ toward the central nervous system. Central nervous system will analyze the messages, will integrate them to give the order. For my hand, you have to hold this bottle of water. So this also needs a taxi between the brain and my effector organ, which is my hand. So I need another taxi. This taxi now is called motor neuron, or it's called efferent. You're going to ask me, how can I differentiate between afferent here and efferent? Sensory, it starts first. So I told my students, sensory starts first. So letter A is first, so afferent. While the motor is the next one, so it's not the first letter, so it's E, efferent. Then the effector organ will receive the decision and perform an action, or will stop action. Okay? Let's have an example about this in this figure. So here, let's say Michael saw a cup of water. So here he has a sensory input using the eyes, sent to the brain, analyze it, and to send a message to the motor output toward the muscle. If I ask you, Fatima, the sensory input, what do we call the neuron? You can unmute yourselves and answer. Sensory input, what do we call the type of a neuron? Afferent or efferent?
Afferent.
Afferent, excellent. So the neuron here, the taxi, is called afferent. It carries the message toward the brain. Thank you, Fatima. And then, Ahmad Shaimin, the message is moved toward the effector organ, toward my hand, through the motor output. So Ahmad, what do we call the neuron through the motor output? It's called afferent or efferent? Yes, Ahmad?
Efferent.
Excellent. The neuron here is called efferent. Thank you. It's called efferent. It carries the message toward the effector organ. So here, cup of water is the stimulus. The eye is the sensory organ. The message is sent from the eye to the CNS, central nervous system, using my sensory neuron. Then from the central nervous system toward the muscles of the hand, using the motor neuron. And here the action, the hand approach to hold the cup of water and drink. So this is the pathway. We have stimulus, which is the cup of water in this case. We have receptor organ, which is the eye in this case. Sensory neuron, central nervous system. It has a special neuron. It's called interneuron. We are going to talk about it. Motor neuron, effector organ, and finally we'll have the response. Arsen reflex, receptor, sensory, interneuron, motor. Interneuron, they are special types of neurons. What are the neurons? We're going to talk about this. So neurons, what is the neuron and what is the function of the neuron? Neuron, the structural and the functional structure of the nervous system. So the functional and the structure, the smallest unit of the nervous system is called the nerve cell, or we call it a neuron. From now on, it's not called a taxi. We call it a neuron. So the neuron is the structural and the functional unit, the smallest unit of the nervous system that form the nervous system. So neuron is a collection or a bundle or a group of something called nerve fibers. And the nerve is a collection of neurons. The neuron has the shape like this. It has the hairy-like structure that are yellow in the figure. They are called dendrites. They receive the message. They have cell body, this one in red, that contains the nucleus, the one in blue. So the cell body, we call it the soma. Axon, which is this one, the blue one, which may be myelinated or not. We're going to talk about this. And finally, we have terminal arborization. This is the figure and the labeling of a neuron. You have to know it. We have dendrites. These are the hair-like structures. They carry impulses and messages toward the cell body. Axon, carry it away from the cell. Myelin shaft, it has a role in acceleration of the nervous message. Okay? So here, group of nerve fibers. They give a neuron. This is an important slide. A neuron, it's formed from group of nerve fibers. Group of neurons, they give a nerve. Group of nerves, they give what's known by the nervous system. Neurons, they are classified either according to their function or according to their structure. According to their structure, you have unipolar. They are T-shaped neuron. They are found in the sensory neurons and in the spinal cord. One axon and one dendrite, they are directly joined. Bipolar, usually found in the retina of the eye and the cerebellum. Multipolar, they have many dendrites and they have only one axon which always leaves the cell body. According to their function, we have sensory neuron, which is called afferent. Sensory neuron receives and conducts sensory information from the peripheral sensory organ to the central nervous system and the receptor organs. Here, interneuron, it's called associative. It has a role in integrating. It's only found in the brain and the spinal cord. So it's like a link. And the motor neuron is called efferent. It carries a message from the central nervous system toward the effector organ to have a response there. Okay? The structure of the neuron, here we have a myelin shaft. Myelin shaft, it acts like it's a lipoprotein first. It has a role as an insulator. It protects the axon. And it has a role in accelerating the nervous message. So whenever we have myelin shaft, the message is going to be faster. Why? Because the message is not going to move straight like this. It's going to move by jumping over the myelin shaft. Jumping in the spaces between the myelin. These are the myelin in red. The spaces between them, like here, they are called node of Ramvier. So the one who discovered this, so they move by jumping. This jumping is called saltatory manner. So myelin shaft is a lipoprotein, as a protective layer and as an insulator. The myelin shaft is not continuous as shown here. The gaps here, they are called nodes of Ramvier. Kind of stimulus. We have different kind of stimulus, chemical stimulus. For example, let's say Ahmed Farhad gave me, for example, chocolate bar. This chocolate bar has, for example, a bitter taste. So I taste it. This is a chemical stimuli. So I'm going to, for example, throw this. Okay? This is a bitter taste or a sour taste. So this is called a chemical stimulus. Mechanical. For example, Sharif stand beside me, and then I hit Sharif on his hand. So this is a mechanical stimuli. Receptors that detect the changes in pressure. Thermal, for example, this is, let's imagine that this is a cup of tea. Okay? I'm going to hold this cup of tea. So whenever I hold it, I remove it quickly. I throw it because it's very hot. So this is related to the thermal, it's related to temperature. Light, for example, I sit in a room that's complete darkness, and someone light a flash, for example, in my eyes. So I'm going to close my eyes or do a reaction. So this is because the stimuli is a light stimuli or a photo stimuli. Electrical is related to the electrical shocks. Kind of receptors. Maybe receptors are classified according either to their position or according to their nature. According to their position, maybe they are exteroreceptors. They are affected by changes outside the body, or entero, they are located in the visceral organ, for example, in the stomach, intestines, and so on. They are affected by changes in the internal movement. These are classified according to their position of stimuli. While some of them they are classified according to the nature. Mechanoreceptors, receptors that detect changes according to mechanical reaction, like pressure, like the skin receptors, receptors in the blood vessels according to the blood pressure. Chemoreceptors, they detect chemical changes, ion concentration, salt concentration, and so on. Photoreceptors found in the eyes, they detect changes in the light. It's related to the light. Thermoreceptors that detect changes in the temperature. Note that all the receptors, they have common characteristics. They are specific. For example, photoreceptor is specific for the light. Adaptation, for example, they are adapted for voltage, let's say 10 volt. Above this, going to be destroyed or something like this. Threshold, the minimum energy needed or the minimum intensity needed to cause a reaction. We will talk about threshold of excitation in details next time. Our receptors can change any type of energy into electrochemical one. So actions, we have voluntary or we have involuntary. Voluntary, it requires thinking. For example, I want to hold my phone and text my friend. So this is a voluntary. I think about this. I use my brain and my spinal cord. While involuntary, I want to hold a cup of tea. This cup of tea is very hot, so I'm going to throw it immediately without thinking. Okay? So this is an involuntary. It's called reflex. From now on, it's called reflex. How to measure the speed? You know, in physics, the speed is delta d over delta t. It's the distance over the time. Okay? This is a general information. We're not going to solve as physics, but this is information you have to know it. Also, what are the factors that affect the speed of propagation of the nervous message? One of these, diameter of the nerve fiber. As the diameter of the nerve fiber increases, the speed of the propagation of the message will move faster. Also, second factor is the myelination of the nerve fiber. Myelin, we said that it's a lipoprotein that acts as a protective layer and has insulation. Also, it has a role in acceleration of the nervous message. It moves faster. Why? Because it moves in a saltatory manner. It moves by jumping. Okay? So the nerve is not product, it propagates in a saltatory manner. You have to pay attention here that presence of myelin has higher effect in the speed, in increasing the speed of propagation than that of the diameter. So the myelin has higher effect. Okay, are we always listening? No. Are we always, for example, studying? Are we always walking? Are we always in pain? No. So the neurons, they are not always functioning. So a neuron is said to be at rest in the absence of any stimulation. There is no stimulation, so there is no nerve fiber is said to be at rest, no movement or no reaction. So this is the first part of our lesson about the nervous system. We said about the different types of neurons according to their function, according to their structure, the different types of actions. We identify the factors that affect the propagation of the nervous message. We have the myelination and the diameter, and we studied the different types of receptors according to their structure and their function. Also identify the neurons. We have three types of neurons: sensory, which are called afferent, interneuron that called associated neuron, and that are found only in the brain and spinal cord, and also we have the motor neuron that are called efferent. So these are required for you for the first part for our lesson. Next time we're going to start with part 2, part 3, and part 4, and so on.